For all the unidirectional and bidirectional entity association, I'm going to take person details project as an example, where in case of all unidirectional demos, person going to act as a main entity and the address going to act as associated one. You can make a separate mapping file for address class. In that case, you need to map it to Hibernate configuration file and the mapping resource element. First, I'm gonna create a class person with property ID and name. We also associate the address class to person class, but before that, let's create a class address. Here I associate the address class as entity. Will have its own identity. The property ID in address class gonna act as primary key at the database end. In address class, define the property city and state with getter and setter. Now let's associate the address class with person class by making reference variable of it with its getter and setter. As we directly associating the reference variable, so a person can only have a single address details associated. I mean to say this is one-to-one association, single person associated to single address. Next, we have to modify the HVM mapping file to make Hibernate aware of the mapping. So we modify the person.hvm.xml file with the mapping many to one. Maybe you are confused that the demo is about one-to-one and here I am using many to one, but with attribute unique set to true that makes the value in the column unique. The column responsible for making the relationship act as foreign key, referring to primary key of the address table. Foreign key column can have a duplicate value, but once we specify the constant unique to true, then no two rows can have the same value in foreign key column, and logically it acts as a primary key. We did the mapping for person table. Now in place of making a separate HBM file for address entity, I'm going to use the same person HBM XML file for mapping. Gonna be easy for me to demonstrate the mapping relation. Define a mapping for class address. Here address gonna act as entity, unlike component, can exist on its own, so need an ID field. Set the generator class as native and map the other two property of the address class city and state also. Let's define the length of the string type property. Gonna be easy for me to use the table using GUI. I'm removing the mapping details of address.hvm.xml from configuration file as I declared the mapping in person.hvm.xml file. Now quickly make a modification to client code. Create an instance of the address class, populate the city with the value Gwalior and state with value MP. Next, create an instance of person class, populate the name property of it with the value shapes and associate the address instance to a person instance. At last, request the session to save the person instance. All done, let's execute the code. Object reference and unsaved transient instance means person referred to unsaved address instance which is still in transient state. Modify the mapping details in the HPM file and let Hibernate take care of saving all the associated instance. For that, on the mapping set, the attribute cascade to Hibernate will take care of persisting all the associated address instance. Now let's execute the client code. Okay, it's working fine. Let's check the table. So two tables are created, address and person, with foreign key column name address. Now let's check the mapping graph. You can see in person we have address with column of type integer acting as foreign key referring to ID column of address. Now what if user want to take care of persisting the associated instance? All you have to do is to remove the cascade option from the mapping details and manually persist the address instance using session.saveAddress. Let's execute it once again. Two queries are fired. First, the address is saved, then the person instance is saved with the foreign key address referring to saved address details. What if we persist the person instance first and then the address instance? Okay, three queries are fired. First, the person instance is saved with maybe null value in the foreign key column, then the address details is persisted, and at last the persist person details is updated to refer to the saved address details. Three queries can result in reduced performance. Thus, until there is a genuine reason to manually save the associated object, we should let the Hibernate make a decision to persist the associated entities by using cascade option set to true.